There are people who walk through the world and see something others don't, not because they try, not because they're special, but because somewhere along the way they stopped accepting the story everyone else agreed to believe. And that changes everything. You know the feeling. You're in a room full of people, everyone nodding along, playing their parts, speaking the expected words, and you feel it. That slight disconnect, that sense that something underneath the surface isn't quite right. Everyone seems comfortable, everyone seems certain, but you can't shake the feeling that what's happening isn't the whole truth. It's a performance, a shared dream, and somehow you've woken up in the middle of it. This is not about being smarter. It's not about being cynical or above it all. It's about something more unsettling. It's about seeing the constructed nature of what everyone else experiences as solid, real, unchangeable. The beliefs, the values, the purposes, the meanings people build their entire lives around. You see them as they are, fragile agreements, stories told so many times they've hardened into truth. And once you see this, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to the comfort of certainty. You can't return to the safety of the illusion. Martin Heidegger understood this deeply. He spent his life examining what he called the question of being, not the facts of existence, but the way we experience existence itself. And what he found was troubling. He found that most people don't actually live in direct contact with reality. They live inside interpretations, inside frameworks, inside what he called das Man, the they-self, the collective mind that tells us how to think, what to value, what to fear, what to want. We think we're living our own lives, making our own choices, but we're mostly repeating patterns handed down to us, following scripts written long before we were born. And this isn't a moral failing. It's not weakness. It's how human beings manage the overwhelming complexity of existence. We create shared meanings, shared purposes, shared ways of seeing. We build a world together and agree to live inside it. This is what makes society possible, what makes communication possible, what makes us feel less alone in the vastness of everything. But it comes at a cost. The cost is truth. The cost is seeing things as they actually are, rather than as we've been taught to see them. The person who begins to see through this finds themselves in a strange position. They're still in the world, still surrounded by people, still participating in the same systems and structures. But they're also outside it, watching it, aware of its constructed nature. They see their friends chasing goals that were implanted, not chosen. They see their family defending beliefs they never questioned. They see entire cultures organized around ideas that could easily have been different. And they feel it. The weight of that awareness. The loneliness of it. Because here's what most people don't understand. Seeing through the illusion doesn't make you free. Not at first. At first, it makes you heavy. It makes you quiet. It makes you watch conversations unfold and realize that everyone is speaking from inside their own dream, their own version of reality, and nobody is actually connecting. They're just trading symbols, playing roles, maintaining the structure, and you're there, aware of it, unable to say anything that would actually bridge the gap. I once knew someone who described it like this. She said it felt like being at a play where everyone else thought they were living real life. They were crying real tears, feeling real emotions, making real decisions. But she could see the stage, she could see the script, she could see the artificiality of it all, and the worst part wasn't that they didn't see it. The worst part was that when she tried to point it out, they looked at her like she was the one who was confused, like she was the one who didn't understand. This is the danger Heidegger warned about. Not the danger of ignorance, but the danger of awakening. Because when you start to see the constructed nature of meaning, when you start to question the foundations everyone else takes for granted, you become a threat. Not because you want to be, not because you're trying to destroy anything, but because your very presence, your very way of being, challenges the stability of the shared illusion. You remind people of something they're trying very hard to forget, that the ground they're standing on is not as solid as they thought. And people don't like that reminder. They don't like the discomfort of questioning. They don't like the vertigo of uncertainty, so they push back, they defend. They call you negative, pessimistic, lost, confused. They tell you you're overthinking, that you should just relax, just go with the flow, just accept things as they are. What they're really saying is, stop threatening our sense of stability, stop making us feel the cracks beneath our feet. But you can't stop. Because once you've seen it, it's everywhere. You see it in the way people talk about their jobs as if they're sacred callings, when really they're just exchanging time for survival. You see it in the way people perform happiness on social media, creating a version of life that looks meaningful, looks fulfilled, looks real. You see it in politics, in religion, in education, in every institution that claims to have answers. You see the machinery underneath, the way beliefs are manufactured, the way consent is engineered, the way people are shaped into citizens, consumers, believers, followers. And the more you see, the more isolated you become, because you can't participate in the same way anymore. You can't get excited about the things that excite everyone else. You can't feel outraged about the things that outrage everyone else. You can't pretend that any of it is as important as everyone is pretending it is, and this makes you strange. This makes you difficult. This makes you dangerous. Heidegger talked about anxiety. Not the anxiety of specific fears, but ontological anxiety. The anxiety that comes from confronting the groundlessness of existence. The anxiety of realizing that there is no ultimate meaning, no cosmic purpose, no inherent order. Just beings thrown into existence, making sense of it however they can. And most people spend their entire lives running from this anxiety. They fill their time with distractions, their minds with certainties, their hearts with beliefs. They build walls of meaning around themselves and call it truth. But you can't build those walls anymore. You've seen what they're made of. You've seen how arbitrary they are. You've seen how easily they could crumble. And so you stand there, exposed, feeling the cold wind of existence, while everyone else huddles inside their shelters, wondering why you won't come in from the storm. This is the loneliness of lucidity, the burden of seeing clearly, and it's not romantic, it's not empowering, it's exhausting, because you're not just carrying your own confusion, your own uncertainty, you're also carrying the awareness that everyone around you is living inside a story they've mistaken for reality, and you can't save them, you can't wake them up. You can only watch and try not to drown in the weight of what you know. There's a particular pain that comes with this. It's the pain of disconnection, not from people exactly, but from the shared world that people inhabit. You're speaking the same language, but the words mean different things. You're looking at the same situations, but seeing different realities. You're living in the same society, but experiencing it from the outside. And this creates a kind of double consciousness. You have to learn to operate in two worlds at once. The world as it appears to everyone else, and the world as you see it. The illusion, and the awareness of the illusion. And the most dangerous part, the part that truly makes you a threat, is that you're not predictable anymore. You don't react the way you're supposed to react. You don't care about the things you're supposed to care about. You don't follow the scripts. You don't play the games. And this unpredictability disturbs the social order, because the social order depends on people being predictable. It depends on people following the rules, accepting the narratives, staying inside the lines. When you step outside those lines, even just in your awareness, you destabilize something. You create a crack in the consensus. People sense this. They might not be able to articulate it, but they feel it. They feel that you're not quite synchronized with everyone else, that you're operating from a different frequency. And it makes them uncomfortable. It makes them suspicious. It makes them keep you at arm's length, because deep down, some part of them knows that if they got too close, they might start seeing what you see. And they're not ready for that. They're not willing to pay that price. Heidegger called this existence in authenticity versus inauthenticity. Authenticity, in his terms, doesn't mean being yourself in some shallow, individualistic sense. It means living in full awareness of your own finitude, your own freedom, your own responsibility for creating meaning. It means not hiding behind the crowd, not letting Das Man think for you, not accepting ready-made purposes. It means standing in the clearing of your own existence and facing what's actually there. But most people don't want authenticity. They want comfort. They want belonging. They want the reassurance that comes from agreement, from shared belief, from collective certainty. Authenticity is lonely. Authenticity is difficult. Authenticity requires courage, and so most people choose the warmth of the crowd, even if it means sacrificing truth. And you can't judge them for this. You can't feel superior, because you understand the appeal. You understand why people choose the illusion. You understand that life is hard enough without having to question everything, without having to carry the weight of cosmic uncertainty. You understand that the illusion serves a purpose. It makes life manageable. It makes suffering bearable. It gives people a reason to keep going. But understanding this doesn't make it easier for you. It doesn't solve your isolation. It doesn't bridge the gap between you and the world. It just adds another layer of complexity, another dimension of loneliness, because now you're not just separate from people. You're separate while understanding exactly why they can't meet you where you are. And this is where many people who see through the illusion get stuck. They get trapped in a kind of bitter wisdom. They see the construction, they see the game, and they become cynical. They become dismissive. They start to treat everyone else as sheep, as blind, as less than, and in doing so they create their own illusion. The illusion of superiority. The illusion that seeing through the game means they've won something, achieved something, risen above. But Heidegger would say this is just another form of inauthenticity, another way of avoiding the real difficulty, because the real difficulty isn't just seeing through the social illusion. The real difficulty is figuring out how to live once you've seen through it, how to create meaning in a world where you know all meaning is constructed. How to connect with people when you see the artificiality of connection. How to care about anything when you understand the groundlessness of everything. There's a specific kind of suffering that comes with this awareness. It's not the suffering of physical pain or emotional loss. It's the suffering of vertigo, of standing at the edge of an abyss and realizing there's no solid ground anywhere. Every belief system, every philosophy, every religion, every political ideology, they're all just different ways of papering over the void. Different stories we tell to make the groundlessness bearable. And when you see this, you can't just pick one story and pretend you believe it. You can't fake faith. You can't manufacture conviction. You know too much. You've seen behind too many curtains. You've watched too many certainties dissolve under examination. And so you're left standing there, unable to rest in any ready-made worldview, unable to find comfort in collective belief. I remember talking to someone who described it as living in a glass house in a city of stone buildings. Everyone else felt protected, enclosed, safe within their walls of certainty. But she could see through everything. The walls were transparent to her. She could see the fragility, the arbitrariness, the constructedness of it all. And while everyone else slept soundly in their stone houses, she lay awake in her glass house, feeling exposed to the infinite cold of space. This is what Heidegger meant by being thrown into existence. We don't choose to be born. We don't choose our time, our place, our circumstances. We're simply thrown here, into the middle of things, with no instruction manual, no cosmic purpose, no inherent meaning. And most people never fully confront this thrownness. They're caught up immediately in the world of meanings that already exists, the roles and identities and purposes that society hands them. They become doctors, teachers, parents, citizens, believers. They fulfill the scripts, they play the parts, and in doing so they avoid the fundamental question, what am I doing here? But you can't avoid that question. It haunts you. It sits underneath everything you do, everything you think, everything you feel. What am I doing here? Why does any of this matter? What's the point of continuing this elaborate dance of meanings and purposes and goals when I know it's all constructed, all contingent, all ultimately groundless? And the temptation, the strong temptation, is to become paralyzed by this, to let the awareness of meaninglessness drain all motivation, all desire, all will to participate in life. Why get up in the morning? Why work? Why love? Why create? Why do anything when you know it's all just human beings playing make-believe, pretending their made-up games are real and important? This is the nihilistic trap, the belief that if there's no ultimate meaning, then there's no meaning at all. If there's no cosmic purpose, then purpose itself is an illusion. If everything is constructed, then nothing matters. And many people who see through the illusion fall into this trap. They become hollow, empty, going through the motions but feeling nothing. Watching life happen around them, but not really participating. Ghosts in their own existence. But here's what takes time to understand, what requires a deeper maturity to grasp. The fact that meaning is constructed doesn't make it meaningless. The fact that purposes are human-made doesn't make them purposeless. The fact that we're playing a game doesn't mean the game can't be beautiful, profound, worth playing. This is the subtle shift that changes everything. It's not about going back to naive belief. It's not about pretending you don't see what you see. It's about moving through the nihilistic crisis to the other side, where you recognize that, yes, we create meaning, and that's exactly what makes it precious. That's exactly what makes it ours. That's exactly what makes it real in the only way that matters. Real for us, real in our lived experience, real in how it shapes our days and our relationships and our sense of who we are. Heidegger talked about being towards death, the recognition that you're finite, that your time is limited, that someday you won't be here anymore. And most people live in denial of this. They know they'll die someday, abstractly, but they don't really feel it. They don't let it inform how they live. They act as if they have forever, as if the game will never end. But when you truly internalize your own finitude, when you really feel the limited nature of your existence, everything changes. Suddenly the question isn't, what's the ultimate meaning of everything? The question becomes, what do I want to do with the time I have? Suddenly the fact that meanings are constructed becomes liberating rather than imprisoning. Because if nothing is handed down from on high, if nothing is predetermined, if nothing is inevitable, then you're free. Free to choose, free to create, free to decide what matters to you. And this freedom is terrifying. It's the terror of radical responsibility. You can't blame anyone else for your life. You can't hide behind society's expectations or tradition's demands or God's will. It's your life, your choices, your meaning, and nobody else can tell you what it should be. Most people run from this freedom. They hide in roles, in identities, in belief systems that tell them who they are and what they should do. They let the collective mind think for them because thinking for yourself is overwhelming. Deciding for yourself is too much responsibility. Creating your own meaning is too much work. But you can't run anymore. You've seen the freedom. You've felt the weight of it, and yes, it's heavy. Yes, it's lonely. Yes, it's frightening. But it's also yours. It's your life, your existence, your one chance to be here, to experience this strange phenomenon of consciousness in a vast universe that doesn't care whether you exist or not. This is the true challenge. And it's here that most people fail. They see through the illusion, but they don't know what to do with that vision. So they either retreat into isolation, becoming hermits in their own minds, or they try to force their vision onto others, becoming prophets, teachers, rebels, thinking that if they could just make everyone else see what they see, everything would be different. But both responses miss something crucial. They miss the fact that the illusion, the social world of shared meanings, is not simply false. It's not just a lie to be exposed. It's also how human beings create the possibility of living together, of understanding each other, of building something larger than themselves. The illusion is the medium through which human life happens. And you can't simply reject it without rejecting the possibility of human life itself. So what do? How do you live in the tension between seeing clearly and living meaningfully? How do you hold both truths at once, that the world of shared meanings is constructed and that it's also necessary? How do you participate in the game without forgetting that it's a game? Heidegger's answer, in a way, was to live in the question itself, to not rush to resolution, to not seek a final answer that would relieve the tension, but to dwell in the awareness, to let it reshape how you move through the world, not with cynicism, but with a kind of gentle knowing, a recognition that everything is more fragile, more human, more improvised than it appears. And maybe this is where the real transformation begins, not in escaping the illusion, but in learning to hold it lightly, in learning to participate without being possessed, in learning to speak the shared language while remembering that it's just one language among infinite possibilities, in learning to care about things even while knowing that your caring is a choice, not a command from the universe. This is a kind of freedom, but it's not the freedom people usually imagine. It's not the freedom of doing whatever you want. It's the freedom of knowing that your life is yours to shape, yours to interpret, yours to give meaning to, even if that meaning is temporary, even if it's not guaranteed by anything outside yourself, even if it could have been different. And yes, this makes you dangerous, because people who live this way can't be controlled in the usual ways. They can't be manipulated through fear or desire. They can't be captured by ideology or dogma. They can't be predicted or managed. They're too aware of the mechanisms, too conscious of the strings. But the danger isn't that you'll destroy the world. The danger is that you'll show, by your very existence, that another way of living is possible, that the certainty everyone clings to isn't as necessary as they thought, that the walls can come down without everything collapsing, that you can live in uncertainty and still find moments of meaning, connection, beauty, truth. And this is threatening precisely because it's true. Because deep down, everyone knows it. Everyone has moments where the illusion cracks, where they feel the groundlessness underneath, where they sense that everything they've been told is just one story among many, and they've been taught to fear those moments, to push them away, to cover them over as quickly as possible. But when they see you living in those moments, not running from them, not destroyed by them, something in them stirs. Some possibility they thought was lost. This is why systems of power have always feared mystics, philosophers, artists, anyone who lives too close to the edge of the constructed world. Not because they're violent or destructive, but because they remind everyone that the emperor has no clothes, that the sacred is human-made, that the eternal is temporary, that the necessary is optional. And once people start to remember this, once they start to feel the possibility of living differently, the whole structure becomes unstable. Not through revolution, not through ideology, but through a slow, quiet loosening of the grip that shared illusions have on human consciousness. This is the danger you represent, not what you do, but what you are. A living question mark in the middle of a world of declarative sentences, a reminder that nothing is as solid as it seems, that every structure could be otherwise, that every truth is an interpretation, that every meaning is a human creation. And the paradox is that the more dangerous you become in this sense, the more gentle you often are in person. Because you're not fighting anyone, you're not trying to tear anything down, you're just living in awareness. You're just being honest about what you see, you're just refusing to pretend anymore. And this, in its own quiet way, is revolutionary. Because a world where everyone pretended a little less, where everyone held their certainties a little more lightly, where everyone remembered that we're all just making this up as we go along, that would be a fundamentally different world. But that world is terrifying to imagine for most people, because it means giving up the comfort of knowing. It means accepting that you're floating in space with no ground beneath you. It means taking full responsibility for your life, your choices, your meanings. It means no more excuses, no more hiding behind what everyone else believes, what society expects, what tradition demands. And most people aren't ready for that. Most people will never be ready for that. And that's okay. You can't force awakening. You can't drag people out of the illusion. All you can do is live your truth and let them encounter it if they're ready. But here's what you need to understand. Your loneliness, your isolation, your sense of not belonging, these aren't signs that something is wrong with you. They're signs that you're living in a different relationship with reality than most people. You're awake in a sleeping world. And yes, that's hard. Yes, that's lonely. Yes, that's exhausting. But it's also real. It's also honest. It's also, in a strange way, beautiful, because you're not lying to yourself anymore. You're not hiding from what you see. You're standing in the clearing of your own existence, facing what's actually there, creating meaning in full knowledge that you're the one creating it. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all anyone can do, not to wake everyone up, not to destroy the illusion, but to live authentically in the middle of it. To be a small light in the darkness, to show, through your way of being, that another way is possible. The people who see through the illusion are dangerous because they threaten the stability of shared dreams, but they're also necessary because without them, without the ones who question, who probe, who refuse to accept the ready-made answers, human consciousness would calcify. It would become rigid, brittle, unable to adapt or evolve. You are part of the breathing of human culture, the inhale and the exhale, the building up and the breaking down, the creating of meaning and the recognition that all meaning is created, and you can't have one without the other. You can't have stability without the possibility of change. You can't have certainty without the question that undermines it. So yes, you're dangerous, but you're also vital. And your loneliness, as heavy as it is also a kind of service. You're holding space for doubt in a world drunk on certainty. You're remembering fragility in a world that pretends to be invincible. You're living the question in a world that insists it has all the answers. There's a particular kind of grace that comes from living this way. Not the grace of having answers, but the grace of being comfortable with questions. Not the grace of certainty, but the grace of wondering. Not the grace of belonging, but the grace of being yourself, even when it means standing alone. You learn to find beauty in unexpected places, in small moments that most people rush past, in the way light falls across a room in the afternoon, in a conversation that touches something real beneath the social performance, in the quiet satisfaction of creating something, making something, thinking something that's genuinely yours, not borrowed from the collective script. You learn to be gentle with people, even as you see through their illusions, because you understand that their illusions aren't lies they're telling. They're survival mechanisms. They're ways of managing the overwhelming complexity of existence. They're scaffolding that holds people up when the ground beneath them feels too unstable, and you don't need to tear that scaffolding down. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You can just be present, aware, and let people live their truths while you live yours. You learn that connection is still possible, even across the gap of different realities. It's just a different kind of connection. It's not the connection of shared belief or shared certainty. It's the connection of shared humanity. The recognition that everyone, in their own way, is struggling with existence. Everyone is trying to make sense of things. Everyone is dealing with pain, confusion, hope, fear, and that struggle, that effort, that sheer determination to keep going, even when nothing is guaranteed, that's worth honoring. That's worth caring about. You learn to hold contradictions, to live with paradox, to accept that you can see the artificiality of social life and still participate in it, that you can know meaning is constructed and still feel moved by beauty, by love, by art, by nature, that you can understand the groundlessness of everything and still choose to build, to create, to care, to try. This is wisdom, not the wisdom of knowing all the answers, but the wisdom of being at peace with not knowing. Not the wisdom of certainty, but the wisdom of flexibility. Not the wisdom of mastery, but the wisdom of humility before the mystery of existence. And slowly, over time, the loneliness transforms. It doesn't disappear. It's still there, but it becomes less painful, less like a wound, and more like a companion. You realize that this loneliness is also a kind of solitude, a space of your own, a clearing where you can think your own thoughts, feel your own feelings, make your own choices without the constant noise of collective opinion drowning out your inner voice. You find others like you sometimes, other people who see through things, other people who live in awareness, and when you find them, there's a recognition, a knowing. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to justify your way of seeing. You can just be, and they understand. These meetings are rare, but they matter. They remind you that you're not the only one, that there are others walking this path, that the loneliness is real, but it's not total. And in the end, when you look back on your life, you won't regret seeing clearly. You won't wish you had stayed asleep. Because whatever else you've been real, you've been honest, you've been awake. And in a world of shared dreams and collective sleepwalking, that's no small thing. You've lived your life as yourself, not as a copy of someone else's idea of who you should be. You've made your choices consciously, not automatically. You've created your meanings deliberately, not by default, and that makes all the difference. That makes a life worth living, even if it's harder, even if it's lonelier, even if it means being seen as dangerous by those who prefer the comfort of illusion. Because at the end of the day, the question isn't whether seeing through the illusion makes life easier. It doesn't. The question is whether it makes life truer, and it does. The question is whether you can live with that truth, whether you can carry it without being crushed by it, whether you can transform it from a burden into a gift. And you can. You are. You're doing it right now, in this moment, as you recognize yourself in these words, as you feel the loneliness and the freedom and the weight and the beauty all at once. As you stand in the clearing of your own existence, aware of what's real and what's constructed, aware of your freedom and your responsibility, aware of your finitude and your possibility. This is what it means to be awake, not to have all the answers, not to be free from struggle, but to live consciously, deliberately, authentically, to face what's actually there, to create meaning in full knowledge that you're creating it, to love even though you know love is fragile, to hope even though you know hope might be disappointed, to try even though you know you might fail. This is the danger you represent, the danger of living fully, the danger of being real, the danger of showing that another way is possible. And the world needs this danger. The world needs people who won't just accept what they're told, who won't just play the assigned roles, who won't just repeat the agreed-upon stories. The world needs people who see clearly and choose to live anyway, to love anyway, to create anyway, to care anyway. That's everything.